Hello, and welcome to Reddit's for Sleep, your peaceful place to unwind and drift gently into rest. As you listen to these stories tonight, take a moment to get comfortable, breathe slowly, and let the world melt away. If you find yourself enjoying the calm here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep sharing these soothing stories just for you. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Feel free to drop a quick comment below. It's always nice to know who we're calming down with. Now, relax and let's begin. Story 1. My wife's secret grief nearly destroyed us. I never expected silence to be so loud in a marriage. My wife, Laura, and I have been married for 27 years. We met at a bookstore in our 20s, bonded over classic literature and bad coffee. She was always gentle, the kind of woman who could calm a storm just by walking into the room. But something changed around 2 years ago. I first noticed it when she stopped humming while she watered the plants. That might sound small, but that little habit used to be part of the soundtrack of our home. Then came the sleepless nights. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring into the dark like she was waiting for something or someone. At first, I chalked it up to menopause. I did my best to be patient. I offered tea, back rubs, even silence when it seemed like words would only float off into nothing. But the emotional distance grew. She stopped laughing at my dry jokes, and when our daughter called, Laura would smile for the camera, but shut down the moment the call ended. It was like she was playing a part in a movie that didn't feel like hers anymore. One night, I came home early from work. Something told me to skip the evening shift, and I found her in the garage. She was holding an old shoebox, the kind you don't look inside unless you're ready to feel something deep. I didn't say anything. I watched her slowly lift the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all written in her handwriting. I waited until she looked up. Her eyes were red but dry. That scared me more than tears. "I think I need to talk," she whispered. We sat in the living room, that same room we used to host book clubs and family birthdays, now feeling like a therapy session. And then she told me something that shook the foundation of our life. "When I was 19, she said, before I met you, I had a son." The words didn't register at first. A son. I gave him up for adoption. My parents forced me to. We never talked about it again. She paused, staring at her hands. They were trembling. I thought I moved on. I really did. But I never forgot his birthday. Every year, I write him a letter, like I'm talking to him. I never sent them, just kept them. I know it's stupid. It wasn't stupid, not even a little. My throat felt tight. I wasn't angry. How could I be? This woman had carried this secret grief for decades. And I never noticed. I shared a bed, a life, a daughter, 1,000 dinners with her. And yet I never knew this enormous part of her story. The next few weeks were quiet, but not the suffocating kind of silence anymore, more like a silence that came after the storm passed. We took slow walks. We talked more than we had in years. Then, one evening, Laura asked if I'd help her try to find him. I won't go into the details of that journey, the phone calls, the waiting, the emotional toll. But after 4 months, we got a letter back. Her son, now a man in his early 30s, had been searching too. He didn't know if she'd want to meet. He didn't want to disrupt her life. But he wrote, "If you want to meet, I'd love that. No pressure, just know I turned out okay. And thank you for everything you must have gone through." We met him in a quiet park. Laura couldn't stop shaking, and I held her hand tighter than I ever had before. When she saw him, tall, kind eyes, quiet voice, she broke down. They didn't rush into calling each other mom and son. That came much later. But what mattered is that the silence was gone. And strangely enough, it healed more than just her. It healed me too. I realized how much pain we sometimes bury for the sake of peace, how grief can quietly sit next to you at dinner or lay between you in bed, and how even the strongest marriages can still have hidden corners. I don't share this with anyone in our real lives, not friends, not coworkers. It's just not something you casually mention over coffee. But I needed to get this off my chest somewhere. Because sometimes the people we love most are carrying entire novels inside them. We just haven't read that chapter yet. Story 2. Man who came back for his tools. I'm not the kind of guy who starts drama. I believe in doing honest work, keeping your head down, and staying out of other people's messes. But there's one thing I won't let slide: someone stealing from me and thinking they'll get away with it. I've been a self-employed handyman in Western Pennsylvania for over 25 years. I'm old school. I fix decks, wire ceiling fans, seal concrete, build sheds, whatever pays the bills. My clients are loyal. They bring me iced tea in the summer and casseroles in the winter. I like that kind of life. That's how I met Jason. He came recommended through a local Facebook group, said he was flipping houses in the area and needed someone dependable for finish work, drywall, tile setting, minor plumbing, the whole nine. I checked him out. He looked the part. Clean truck, branded polos, the whole HGTV vibe. Promised fast payments, repeat work, even equity shares if I stuck with him. I didn't care about equity. I just wanted to be paid on time. We signed a basic agreement. He promised $7,500 for 3 weeks of labor, plus reimbursement for materials. I showed up the next Monday, ready to work. First week was fine. I laid new tile in 2 kitchens, reframed a sliding glass door, and fixed a nightmare of a shower install that some other contractor messed up. Jason would swing by every other day, talk fast, and then disappear for hours. Then the money delays started. Hey man, my bank's being weird. Can I Zelle you tomorrow? I had a closing get pushed back. Mind holding off until Monday. The red flags kept coming. I gave him benefit of the doubt until the 4th week rolled around. I was already deep into the second property and still hadn't seen a dime. I texted, called, even dropped by his supposed office address. It was a UPS store mailbox. Then I checked the property site. Gone. The locks had been changed. The staging furniture was gone, and so were all of my tools. We're talking everything. My DeWalt miter saw, both Milwaukee drill sets, my grandfather's custom oak tool chest, the one he built himself in the 60s, thousands of dollars worth of gear, stuff I'd collected over decades. I was gutted, but more than that, I was furious. I filed a police report. Not that it helped. No witnesses, no cameras. I posted in a few contractor groups. Turns out I wasn't the only one Jason had ghosted. A drywall guy from Erie, a painter from New Kensington, a flooring guy from Monroeville. He ran the same scam on all of us. Promise big jobs, stretch out the payments, vanish before payday. I felt sick. But then I got lucky. About 6 weeks later, one of the guys in a contractor group messaged me. "Isn't this the guy who screwed you?" He attached a Facebook post Jason had made. Jason was starting another flip, this time in a suburb just outside Pittsburgh. He posted selfies on site, bragging about revamping Pittsburgh's west side one home at a time. He'd even geotagged the location. I drove by early the next morning, brought my buddy Caleb, who owns a tow truck. We circled the block, keeping an eye out. Then I saw it. In the open garage, under a tarp, my tools, my yellow-painted sawhorses, my custom chest with the faded U.S. flag sticker, my drills. No doubt about it. I didn't go inside. I didn't touch anything. I called my lawyer friend who confirmed what I suspected. Since I had serial numbers recorded and photos of my initials carved into some pieces, I had a decent case for reclaiming stolen property, especially since it hadn't changed ownership and was unattended on a site I never got paid for. So we moved fast. We waited until Jason left, probably off pretending to meet with investors or whatever nonsense he spun. Caleb backed his flatbed into the driveway. I documented everything: photos, video, the garage open, the equipment visible, my name carved into the toolbox. We loaded up every single item that was mine. Nothing more, nothing less. Before we left, I left a note taped to the garage wall. Not stolen, just retrieved. You still owe me $7,500 in unpaid labor, but I'll settle for what was mine. Don't contact me. I never heard from Jason again. But a week later, he posted on the same local Facebook group raging about sabotage and petty thieves. He said haters had broken into his job site, set him back thousands. Funny thing is, the comments didn't back him up. People started piling on. Former clients, other contractors, even a tile supplier who said he bounced a check. The post got taken down after a few hours, but by then, his rep was shredded. Now, he's vanished again, probably trying the same scam in another state. But I got my tools back. And in this line of work, that's like getting a piece of your soul returned. Because it's not just about money. These tools built porches, installed baby cribs, repaired widow's sinks, and fixed up flood-damaged basements after storms. They're part of my story. So, no, I didn't get paid. But I got justice. Quiet, honest justice. And sometimes, that's all a man really needs. Story 3. The neighbor who mowed my lawn for 3 years. I didn't know his name for almost 4 years. To me, he was just the guy across the street with the old baseball cap and the noisy mower. Every Tuesday morning, without fail, he'd mow his lawn, then mine. I live in a small town just outside Richmond, Virginia, the kind of place where grocery store clerks know your dog's name and local restaurants remember your usual order. My house sits on a quiet cul-de-sac with about 7 other homes. Nice neighborhood. Not overly friendly, but polite. I bought the house after my divorce. It was the first time I'd lived alone in over 20 years. The silence was jarring at first. No clinking of dinner plates. No TV in the background, just me and the occasional drip of the kitchen faucet. When I moved in, I wasn't in a good place. I was tired. Tired of pretending I was fine. Tired of being amicable in public while my heart felt cracked in half. So I didn't bother learning names. I waved at people out of politeness, then closed the blinds. Then, one morning, I woke up to the sound of a lawnmower. I looked outside, thinking maybe I'd slept through a landscaping appointment. But no, it was the man across the street. Faded jeans, white New Balance sneakers, pushing his rusted red mower along my grass like it was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't know what to do. Should I run out and tell him to stop, offer money, say thank you? Instead, I stood behind the curtain like a confused raccoon. When he finished, he didn't knock, didn't wave. He just walked back to his driveway, cracked open a can of something, and sat in a fold-out chair like it was just another Tuesday. The next week, he did it again. And the week after that. Eventually, I started leaving little signs of thanks. A 6-pack of root beer on his porch. A thank you card tucked into his mailbox. Once, I even made a batch of chocolate chip cookies and left them in a sealed container on his steps with a sticky note that just said, "For your kindness, from across the street." No response. No return gesture. Just the same Tuesday routine, week after week. I started to look forward to the sound of his mower. It became a strange kind of comfort, like a neighborly heartbeat keeping time for the week. I'd sip my coffee at the window and watch him work, always focused, never distracted. Then, after about 3 years, the mowing stopped. Tuesday came and went. Then the next. I waited. Thought maybe he was on vacation. But by the third week, I started to worry. His lawn grew patchy. His front porch looked untouched. No morning chair, no open can of Coke. I didn't want to intrude, but something didn't sit right. So I finally walked across the street. It was the first time I'd stood on his porch. I knocked once, then again. After a moment, the door cracked open, and there he was. A little thinner, eyes tired, but still him. He looked surprised, like seeing me on his porch broke some unwritten neighborhood law. "Hi," I said awkwardly. "I just wanted to check in. You haven't mowed lately. I hope everything's okay." He gave me a small, lopsided smile. "Chemo," he said simply. My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't know." He nodded. "Not something you go shouting from rooftops." I stood there for a second, unsure what to say. Then he looked at me and added, "I figured you needed the help back then. You didn't have the look of someone who wanted to talk, but your lawn, it looked like it could use a friend." I almost laughed. It was such a simple way to say something so kind. We ended up talking for almost 20 minutes. His name was Don. He was a retired welder, widowed 6 years ago, said he missed mowing grass more than he expected, called it the quietest kind of therapy. After that, we started talking more. Not every day, not even every week, just enough. I brought over some frozen meals when I made too much food. He gave me tips on how to edge my driveway cleaner. Eventually, his treatments ended. The mowing didn't come back right away, but the fold-out chair did. Now we sit out there some evenings, side by side. Two quiet people with quiet pasts, watching squirrels run across power lines and teenagers speed past stop signs. I mowed his lawn last Tuesday, just because. Didn't leave a note, didn't knock, just did it. He gave me a nod from the porch and raised a can of Coke like a salute. It was the most peaceful moment I've had in years. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I don't feel alone anymore. Story 4. The piano. Nobody played until she did. I used to think the piano in the lobby of my apartment building was just for decoration. It sat there, against the wall between the elevators and the mailboxes upright, old, a little scratched on the side. There was a small placard on top that read, "Donated in memory of Alice Montgomery, 1932-2014. Please play gently." Nobody ever did. I've lived in the same apartment building in Minneapolis for 12 years now. It's one of those older high-rises that still has carpeted hallways and mail slots instead of digital lockers, mostly older tenants, people who value peace and quiet. Not exactly the type to strike up conversation in the laundry room. Every once in a while, a kid visiting their grandparent would pick a few notes before their mom rushed over and hushed them. But that was it. For over a decade, that piano was just background. Until the new girl moved in. I say girl because she was younger than the rest of us, probably early 30s. Moved in alone, middle of January. Brutal cold that week. I remember watching from my window as she carried a small couch by herself up the sidewalk, slipping twice on the ice, but never stopping. Her name was Rachel, I'd later find out. She kept to herself. Always wore a beanie, headphones in, grocery bags balanced on her forearms like she was in a race. Then, one Sunday morning, I was checking my mail and I heard it. Piano. Not just random keys. Music. Soft, thoughtful playing. Something classical, I think. Not showy, just sincere. I froze. The sound filled the lobby in a way I'd never heard before. It warmed the walls, made the elevator chime feel like part of the song. I peeked around the corner. It was Rachel, sitting upright, eyes closed, fingers moving like they were remembering something before her brain could catch up. She played for maybe 5 minutes. then stood up and left like nothing happened. I didn't say a word. Didn't want to break the spell. But something about it stayed with me the whole day. That week, it happened again. Same time, Sunday morning, just after 9 a.m. This time it was something slower, maybe a lullaby. One of those tunes that makes you feel nostalgic for something you never even lived through. Eventually, a few of us started quietly gathering in the lobby during that hour. We didn't talk. We just listened. Some would pretend to check their mail. Others brought folding chairs. One guy brought a thermos of coffee and nodded at whoever sat next to him. Rachel never said anything. Never acknowledged the small crowd. She'd just play one, maybe two pieces, then slip back upstairs. It became our building's ritual. And in a way, it changed everything. The woman in 3B who never made eye contact started baking muffins and leaving them in the lobby with handwritten labels. The retired teacher in 7F, who'd lost his wife last year, started bringing crossword puzzles to share. One week, someone left fresh flowers on the piano with a note, "Thank you for the music." Then one Sunday, Rachel didn't come. No piano, no music, just silence. At first, we figured she was out of town. But when a week passed, then two, we started to wonder. I ended up asking the front desk if she was okay. They told me she was fine, just going through something personal and didn't want to be disturbed. So we waited. A month later, she returned. She sat at the piano again, but this time, she looked different. Heavier, somehow. Not in size, but in presence. Like she'd been carrying something painful. She played a single song. I don't know the name. But I'll never forget the way it made the room feel. Like time had slowed down just enough for all of us to breathe. When she stood to leave, one of the residents, Mrs. Henderson, who usually kept to herself, gently placed a hand on Rachel's arm. "You were missed," she said. Rachel gave a small smile, eyes glassy, and for the first time, she spoke. "My mom passed. She used to play the same piano every Sunday, growing up. I thought playing again might help me feel close to her. But when she died, I couldn't even look at it. The whole lobby was quiet. Not awkward quiet. Just respectful. Soft." Then she added, almost like a whisper, she would have loved that people listened. Rachel still plays now. Not every week, but enough. Sometimes it's upbeat jazz. Sometimes it's something so slow and sad it gives you goosebumps. And even when she's not there, people still gather. We share recipes, books. Someone started a Sunday crossword club. A couple of kids from 5C even take turns trying out scales with their dad coaching them. The piano still sits in the same spot. But now it's not just furniture. It's a reminder that sometimes the quietest things, the background details of life, hold the most power to bring people together. And sometimes all it takes is one person sitting down and playing what's already in their heart. Story 5. The letter that came with no return address. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address. No postage mark. Just a plain white envelope slipped into my mailbox, nestled between a grocery store flyer and my water bill. At first, I thought it was junk, but when I opened it, something told me this wasn't random. The paper was thick, handwritten, not printed. Neat cursive, the kind you don't see much anymore. Slightly slanted, written in black ink. It started simply, "You don't know me, but I used to live in the house you live in now, and lately I've been thinking about the window above the kitchen sink." That one sentence stopped me cold, because that window, that little square pane above the sink, the one that fogs up every time I do dishes, It's my favorite part of this place. I rent a small 1950s bungalow in a quiet town in Ohio. Moved in 3 years ago after a messy breakup and a cross-state job change. The house is nothing fancy, but it has character creaky floors, crown molding, a fireplace that doesn't work but looks nice anyway. That window over the sink, though, it catches the morning light like stained glass. Sun hits it around 7:15 and turns the kitchen gold. I always thought it was my own little secret. But now, someone else was talking about it. I kept reading. When I was growing up, my mother used to hum while she did dishes in front of that window. I remember her wiping suds from her hands to wave at neighbors. That window was our weather report, our neighborhood watch, our daydream portal. I always wondered who'd stand there after we left. No name, no signature, just that. I read it 3 times. Then again, the next morning, while the sun filtered through that same window, I figured that was it. A one-time poetic goodbye from someone clinging to memory. But 2 weeks later, another letter came. Same white envelope, same cursive. Do you ever hear the floor creak in the hallway at night? That was my father's path from the bedroom to the kitchen. Always 3 steps, pause, then the fridge door. He used to sneak those little strawberry yogurts, even after he got sick. The detail was so vivid, it felt like a scene from a film I didn't know I was living in. I started paying attention to those sounds at night, and sure enough, the floor creaked, exactly as described. 3 steps, pause, then the subtle hum of the fridge. I began looking forward to these letters. They weren't frequent, maybe once every couple of weeks, but each one painted a deeper picture of the home I thought I already knew. There was one about a Thanksgiving where the power went out, and they cooked mashed potatoes on the grill. Another about a cat named Murphy who liked to sit in the bathroom sink. One letter simply described the sound of rain on the sunroom roof and how it made them feel safe. Then came the one that shifted something in me. When we moved, I cried the whole drive out. I was 12. My parents tried to cheer me up with ice cream and loud music, but I just kept thinking about the blue paint on my bedroom walls. I wonder if you ever repainted it. I hope not. That night, I went into the guest bedroom, which I barely use, and flipped on the light. The walls were still faintly blue. I'd never even noticed before. And suddenly, this house didn't feel like just a rental anymore. It felt like a chapter in a book I hadn't finished reading. One afternoon, I taped a note to the inside of my mailbox. I've been reading your letters. Thank you for sharing this house with me. I didn't include my name. 2 weeks later, I got one final envelope. It was shorter than the others. It read, "Thank you for listening, for noticing. It means more than you know. This was a good house to grow up in. I'm glad it's in good hands." Still no signature, still no return address. I never got another one after that. But even now, years later, I think about those letters. Sometimes I reread them when the house feels too quiet. Sometimes I stand by that window over the sink and imagine the girl who stood there before me. Because the truth is, we never really live alone. We live in stories stacked on stories. We walk on floors where others once danced, cry in rooms where others once laughed, and we look out windows where someone else once dreamed. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we get a small letter reminding us we're part of something much bigger than we know. If you're still awake and enjoying the stories, maybe take a quiet moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep this peaceful space going, and you'll always have something calm to fall asleep to. No pressure, just whenever it feels right. Story 6. The man who kept fixing the community mailbox. There's a guy in our neighborhood named Walter. He's in his late 60s, wears a faded Detroit Tigers cap, and rides one of those old squeaky bicycles with a giant wire basket on the front. He's not loud. He's not overly friendly. But he's everywhere. You'll see him trimming bushes that aren't his, sweeping leaves off the curb, replacing those little solar lights along the sidewalk when they stop working without being asked. No one really knows what he does or where he came from. He just appeared one day and then never left. We live in a modest HOA neighborhood just outside Ann Arbor. Nothing fancy townhomes mostly, shared lawns, one small park, and a community mailbox at the entrance where everyone picks up their mail. And that's where the story really starts. Our community mailbox has always been a bit of a disaster. The keyholes get jammed, hinges come loose, rain leaks in through the top panel when the weather turns rough. People have complained to the HOA for years. Nothing ever really gets fixed. They send out one email every winter telling us they're looking into replacement options, and then nothing. Until Walter decided he'd had enough. The first time I noticed something was different, it was subtle. One of the broken hinges had been replaced, not by the HOA. There was no announcement, just a new, shiny hinge. A few weeks later, someone spray painted over the rusted box with a neutral gray color, not quite the same as the old finish, but close enough. Then, one by one, the keyholes started working again. I asked around. Nobody had seen a contractor. No one got a service notice. It was like some kind of mystery maintenance elf was sneaking in overnight and handling things the HOA wouldn't. Eventually, I caught him in the act. It was a Saturday morning. I was heading out to grab coffee when I saw Walter standing by the mailbox with a small tool bag. He had a magnifying glass, a can of WD-40, and a bunch of tiny brass screws spread out on a towel like a surgeon prepping for work. "Morning," I said. He looked up and nodded. One of the locks was sticking again. Figured I'd clean it out before someone jams their key and makes it worse. I hesitated, then said, technically that's the HOA's job." He shrugged. "Yeah, well, technically the HOA's supposed to clean the gutters too." Fair point. I offered him a coffee, which he declined. Said caffeine made his hands shake, but I stood there and watched him work for a while. He moved slowly, carefully, like he was fixing something more important than a mailbox. That was almost a year ago. Since then, Walter's made a quiet habit of maintaining things around the neighborhood, but never for attention. He mows the strip of grass behind the dog park that no one else claims, replaces bulbs in the lampposts when they flicker out, leaves handwritten notes on doorsteps if your porch light's out or your tire looks low. He doesn't expect anything in return, but people started noticing. Someone started leaving baked goods in his basket. Another neighbor gave him a handwritten card that just said, "Thank you for caring," when no one else would. I once asked him why he did it. His answer stuck with me. I was a maintenance supervisor for a retirement home for 32 years. After I retired, I found myself waking up early, walking around looking for things to fix. Old habits die hard. Figured I might as well keep doing what I know. Just somewhere else. He said the work made him feel useful, and I could tell he meant it. That word useful carried a kind of weight in his voice, like it wasn't just about tools and screws. It was about being seen, being needed. Some of the newer neighbors have never even met him. They think the HOA finally stepped up. They don't realize Walter's been quietly holding the neighborhood together like invisible glue. The funny thing is, the HOA still sends those same emails. Still says they're reviewing bids for the mailbox. Still says they're working on a seasonal maintenance plan. But we all know the truth. The mailbox doesn't need replacing anymore. It just needs Walter. And one day, If he ever moves away or decides to stop, I hope someone else notices the creaky lock before it breaks again. I hope someone keeps the lights on, the grass cut, the neighborhood cared for. Because what Walter taught me, without saying a word, is that the quietest people sometimes hold the loudest impact. And you don't always need a title or permission or payment to make the world around you a little better. Sometimes you just show up with a wrench and do it anyway. Story 7, Forgotten Birthday Surprise. I never thought a forgotten birthday could teach me so much about love. I live in a quiet suburb outside Portland, Oregon, with my husband Mark. We've been married for 7 years. Nothing flashy. Just the two of us, our dog Murphy, and a garden we're slowly trying to revive. Mark is a great guy, but he's not the best at remembering dates. Birthdays, anniversaries, even our wedding date sometimes slip his mind. I always joked that if my birthday disappeared from the calendar, he'd never notice. Last year, on my 38th birthday, I decided to test that theory. I didn't drop hints. No texts, no social media posts, no countdowns. I just went about my day, acting normal. We had a quiet morning coffee, breakfast, Murphy chasing his tail in the yard. Mark went to work, kissed me goodbye, as usual, and left. All day, no calls, no messages. By the time evening rolled around, I was feeling a little forgotten. I cooked dinner, a simple pasta recipe from a cookbook we got for Christmas, sat down to eat alone. Halfway through, I heard the front door open. Mark walked in, carrying a small, wrinkled brown paper bag. "I know I'm late," he said, sheepishly, "but I've got something." Inside the bag was a dozen store-bought cupcakes, chocolate with sprinkles. Not fancy, not expensive. But it was enough. He pulled out a small folded card. Inside it read, "Happy birthday. Sorry I messed up. I love you more than cupcakes." We laughed, ate the cupcakes. Then Mark surprised me. "I planned a weekend getaway," he said. "Booked us a cabin near Mount Hood. Just you, me, and some fresh air." I realized then that sometimes love isn't about perfect moments. It's about showing up, even when you mess up. That weekend we drove 2 hours east into the mountains. The cabin was rustic. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal, just trees, a fireplace, and the sound of the river outside. We spent the days hiking, cooking over the fire, and talking like we hadn't in months. That forgotten birthday, it turned out to be one of the best ones I've ever had. Because it wasn't the cupcakes or the gifts. It was the reminder that even imperfect love can be steady, kind, and true. And sometimes, that's the sweetest surprise of all. Story 8. The Lost Dog and the Mailman's Secret. Our neighborhood in suburban New Jersey is the kind where everyone knows your name, your dog's name, and probably what you had for dinner last night. We all trust each other, mostly. That's why when my neighbor's golden retriever, Buddy, went missing, it shook the whole street. Buddy was a gentle giant, always wagging his tail, snoozing on porches, and stealing snacks from kids who weren't paying attention. When he disappeared one Friday afternoon, it felt like the neighborhood lost its heart. The owner, Mrs. Ramirez, posted flyers everywhere. She called shelters. She walked Buddy's usual routes every evening with a flashlight, hoping to catch a glimpse. But days passed, no sign of Buddy. That's when Mr. Jenkins, our mailman, stepped in. Mr. Jenkins is an older man, late 60s, always wearing a blue USPS jacket and a baseball cap. He's quiet, keeps to himself mostly, but everyone likes him. One afternoon, while delivering mail, I saw him talking to Mrs. Ramirez on her porch. Curious, I overheard a little of their conversation. "I think I saw a dog matching Buddy's description near the industrial park," he said. "Didn't want to say anything till I was sure." Mrs. Ramirez's eyes lit up. He explained that while delivering packages behind the warehouses, he'd spotted Buddy hiding under a truck, scared but unharmed. The problem was, the area was tricky to reach, and not safe for Mrs. Ramirez to go alone. Without hesitation, Mr. Jenkins offered to help. That Saturday morning, the two of them went to the industrial park with a leash and treats. After some coaxing and a few nervous barks, Buddy finally came out. Mrs. Ramirez hugged him tight, tears in her eyes. Turns out, Buddy had wandered off during a thunderstorm, got scared, and hid in the industrial area without a way back. Mr. Jenkins never made a big deal of it, didn't ask for thanks or recognition. But the neighborhood noticed. A week later, we organized a small block party in the park. Mrs. Ramirez brought cupcakes, I grilled hot dogs, kids played frisbee, dogs ran free. Mr. Jenkins showed up too, shy but smiling. When I thanked him, he shrugged and said, "Just doing my job." But I'm glad Buddy's back where he belongs. That day, I realized how sometimes the quietest people make the biggest difference. Not with fanfare or speeches, but with steady, simple acts of kindness. And maybe that's the kind of story we all need before sleep, one that reminds us there's good in the world. Sometimes, just around the corner. Story 9. The coffee shop stranger who knew my name. I'm not much of a talker. I like my routines, my quiet spaces. And my coffee black. No sugar, no fuss. Every morning, I stop by the same Starbucks in downtown Chicago. Same order, same corner seat near the window. For years, I was invisible there, just another face in the morning rush. Then one day, it happened. I walked in, ordered my usual, and before I could find a seat, a voice said, "Hey, Jason, the usual." I froze. No one knew my name there, not the baristas, not the other customers. But the woman behind the counter was smiling like she'd known me for years. I looked at her brown hair tied in a messy bun, bright green eyes, and a name tag that said, Liz. "How do you know my name?" I asked, curious and a little guarded. She laughed. "You come here every morning at 7:15 sharp. You pick the same seat by the window. You always read the newspaper or scroll on your phone. After 6 months, I started paying attention." I smiled. That was the start of a simple, quiet friendship. Liz would save my coffee when the line was long. Sometimes she'd write little notes on the cup, "Have a good day," or "You've got this." One morning, I noticed she looked tired. I asked if everything was okay. She told me about her dad, sick with cancer, in the hospital 2 hours away. She was struggling to balance work and family. Without thinking, I offered to pick up groceries for her. She accepted, surprised. After that, we started helping each other in small ways. She'd cover my shift if I was late for work. I'd drive her to the hospital when her car broke down. The conflict wasn't dramatic or loud. It was just two people navigating life's challenges, quietly, leaning on each other, without pressure or expectations. One rainy afternoon, she handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Thanks for noticing me." I realized then how easy it is to be invisible in a big city and how much difference a little kindness can make. Sometimes, the best stories aren't about grand gestures. They're about small connections that remind us we're not alone. And maybe that's the kind of story you want to hear before drifting off to sleep. Story 10. The gardener who taught me to let go. I met Elaine one spring afternoon in a small community garden behind my apartment building in Seattle. She was tending to a patch of tulips, kneeling in the dirt with hands coated in soil, humming softly to herself. I was new to gardening, more of a watch and wait kind of person. My own small balcony plants were struggling, and I'd been feeling restless, stuck in a routine that didn't leave much room for growth. One day, curiosity got the best of me. I asked if she needed help. Elaine looked up, smiled gently, and said, "You don't have to know how. Just be willing to get your hands dirty." That was the start of something unexpected. Over the next few weeks, I showed up in the garden with gloves and a trowel, ready to learn. Elaine taught me about patience, how plants grow on their own time, and how sometimes you have to prune back the old leaves before new ones can thrive. One day, she pointed to a withered rose bush. "Sometimes," she said, "you have to let go of what's no longer alive to make room for new growth. Holding on only keeps you stuck." Her words settled deep inside me. I realized I'd been holding on to old regrets, relationships that ended years ago, mistakes that haunted me, dreams I thought I'd lost. I started applying the same care to myself as I did to the garden. I let go. I forgave. I began planting new seeds, hobbies, friendships, even hope. Elaine never judged or preached. She just showed up with kindness, a steady presence in the dirt and the sun. One afternoon, as the garden bloomed in riotous color, she handed me a small pot with a young basil plant. "Keep this," she said. "Remember that growth is messy, but worth it." That basil became my daily reminder to nurture myself, to be patient, to trust the process, and maybe, most importantly, to let go. Now, every time I see that plant thriving on my windowsill, I remember Elaine's gentle wisdom. How sometimes the quietest lessons come from the simplest places. And how, even when life feels like it's stuck in winter, spring is just around the corner. Thank you for joining me tonight on Reddit's for Sleep. I hope these stories brought you comfort and peace as you prepare to rest. If you enjoyed this gentle journey, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It's a quiet way to support the channel and keep these moments coming. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's a small connection that means a lot. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next story.